Morning, everybody. Today I was studying a little bit in Matthew 26, and I thought it was kind of interesting to pay attention to what Jesus actually knew, or what he knows. In Matthew 26, the first thing that happens is that we kind of get kicked into gear with his feet being doused with perfume, and then it moves into Jesus saying that these things have to happen. So him being taken by the Pharisees, that all has to happen to fulfill Scripture. He also earlier told Peter that Peter would deny him 3 times just before this chapter, and so it's all kind of interesting to see all the stuff that Jesus knew at the time. He was telling the disciples what would go down, in the sense that he said that his feet being having the perfume poured on his feet, that would be told throughout all the generations where the gospel would be told, or all the locations where the gospel would be told. Well, how did he know? How did Yeshua know that the gospel would be spread so far and so wide? And how did he know that this particular story would make it into the Gospels? Because they hadn't been written yet, right? I mean, the disciples could have easily forgotten this story, forgotten about her washing his feet. It could have easily slipped by all 4 of the Gospel writers, but it didn't. In fact, it made it into the Gospels, and it is literally preached everywhere the Gospel is preached. Her sacrifice is known throughout the globe, throughout Christendom. And so I think that's kind of interesting. Morning, Miss Morgan. Morning, Carl. Morning, everybody. But I think what's really, to me, amazing is that Yeshua continued to prove things that he knew what was going to happen. He knew that Peter was going to deny him 3 times. And that's what's really mind-blowing for me, is that Jesus knew it was going to happen. He told Peter it was going to happen, and then the Gospels annotate that he was correct in that. And it broke Peter. It broke him to know that Jesus, despite what Peter felt at the moment when Jesus told him that, Jesus knew what was going to go down. Now think about this. What does Jesus know about you? What does he know about your life? What does he know about what you're going to do today? What has the Father talked to you about and said, don't do these things. You're going to do these things. You're going to be tempted to do these things. Don't do these things. Think about what the Father knows, what Yeshua knows about what's going on in your life. Do you want him to know those things? Do you want him to be able to tell you that that's what's coming next? Because it broke Peter. It broke him when he realized, man, the rooster just crowed 3 times. Or the rooster just crowed and I denied him 3 times. Imagine what it must have felt like for Peter, basically the leader of all these guys, to realize, and then to take it a step further, he is still chosen. I mean, what I think is really crazy is, Yeshua knew that Judas was going to trade on him, right? I mean, he had to have known because he told everybody. So he knew that Judas was going to trade on him, and yet he sent him out to heal people. He sent him out to exorcise demons. Judas did all the stuff the other disciples did. He knew Peter was going to deny him. He knew how many times, and he knew when he was going to do it. And yet, he still chose Peter to lead the church. And not just lead at the time, but even after he followed through and did deny Jesus 3 times. Peter was still an instrumental, or if not the most integral part of the church growing like it did. That's pretty important, I think. That's pretty impressive. That despite what Jesus knew about these guys, he still chose them to be part of the ministry, to be part of the gospel. You're part of the gospel. You don't realize it, you may not think about it, but your testimony is a continuance of the gospel. Your testimony of what Christ does in your life is a continued story of what Christ has done on this earth. He hasn't stopped. It hasn't ended. God's influence has not changed. His message hasn't changed. And you living out your faith continues the gospel forward. We're going to overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. Why? Because that's the gospel. That's the gospel that's going to be preached. It starts all the way back then, and it still continues today. And despite who you are, whether you're going to trade Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, or you're going to deny him 3 times, he's still chosen you to go and spread the gospel. He's still chosen you to be an ambassador of Christ. So again, I ask you, what does Jesus know? I got to think about that myself. Anyhow, that's what God gave me today, guys. Love you guys. God bless.